Namaskar. I welcome you all in the session one of Mission Education 2.0. Change is the only permanent thing in life. Changes may be rapid or time-taking. We are living in the era where things are instantly available on a single click. As we know that education is for life, not merely for living. In the first session, we'll discuss reimagining education, getting ready for the rapidly changing digital world. We have eminent panelists, Professor S.S. Gokhale and Professor S.S. Mamtha. And the third guest, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, he's on the way and he'll join us meanwhile. I welcome eminent guest, Professor S.S. Gokhale, Chairperson, BOG, NIT Durgapur. Professor Gokhale has mentored LNMIIT, IIT Jaipur, NIT Nagpur, Kozhikode, Raipur, and Mizoram as a director. Dr. Gokhale holds a PhD degree from University of Illinois in aerospace, aeronautical, and aeronautical engineering. He is an alumnus of IIT Bombay. Welcome, Dr. Gokhale.
Thank you.
I welcome eminent speaker, Professor S.S. Mamtha, CEO, Mahapreet Startup Knowledge Center, former chairman AICT, former chancellor KL University. And the nation is grateful to you, Professor Mamtha, for bringing transparency, accountability through implementing e-governance in education governance sector especially. Professor Mamtha is a regular contributor in English daily newspapers on various topics from education, industry, and several social issues. He runs an interesting program named as Saturday Wisdom on his YouTube channel. So today is not Saturday, it's Friday, but we'll be able to avail Professor Mamtha's wisdom on Friday as well. To begin with, Professor Mamtha, how do you reimagine education towards a global common good through inclusive digital transformation?
Good afternoon, Puneet.
I'm sorry to interrupt, sir. Dr. Vaishnav has joined.
Yeah. So
Welcome, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav.
Thank you very much. Sorry, running from another meeting.
I understand.
Yeah.
You're already through speed Delhi, Mumbai, across the country. Let me welcome Dr. Chintan Vaishnav. He is Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Ayog. Dr. Chintan Vaishnav is a socio-technologist and engineer trained to design and build large-scale systems that possess both human as well as technological complexities. Earlier, Dr. Vaishnav has served MIT USA, and for last more than 1 year, he is serving Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Ayog, bringing lots of transformation through innovation activities. Welcome, Dr. Vaishnav. Over to you, Professor Mamtha. We may continue, please.
Yeah.
Sorry for interruption.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Puneet, Professor Gokhale,
yes, sir.
Dr. Vaishnav. Like everything has been evolving, the education space also has been evolving. And today, I mean, at one point of time, the universities had set the agenda for the industry. And the entire development took off from what the universities did on their campuses and so on. But the times they have changed. Today, the industry seems to be driving the education space. Having said that, there is a lot more collaboration that is required to succeed in the current times. And all that collaboration probably cannot happen offline. I mean, meeting people and things like that. So technology has provided that advantage today in order to connect with people, in order to connect with the research work that one does, or the developments that one looks at in whatever space they are currently in. Most of the technology is today being driven by what we term as digital transformation. And in the new scheme of things, our universities and the institutions of higher education will need to be operating like Velcro institutions. You must be it must be possible to twist and turn them and make them adaptable to different changing scenarios and so on. And that's what the digital transformation puts as an additional pressure on the functioning of universities and functioning of institutions and so on. Now, on the other side, whereas the universities and institutions are on the supply side, the demand side also has been evolving, and a lot of changes have taken place in that space. In the early universities were never meant, probably even today, it's true. The universities are not meant to guarantee a job, but then they are meant to, provide the skills, provide the means, and so on to make a decent living in the outside world. But the transformation has been happening so fast that it's now very difficult to say that the universities are there only for making a good citizen. So that, though that remains the fundamental view. Now, how do these things connect? For example, the current industry based on the digital push and things like that, the skills that are required, unfortunately, have a shelf life. And probably 2 years, 3 years, you need to reskill, upskill, and come back and be cognitively flexible in order to fit into that space of changing, scenario. And even technology seem to have a shelf life. And probably 5 years back, we didn't even hear of the technologies that we are actually using today. So all this calls for a lot of transformation in the way we teach, the teaching learning processes, the pedagogies that we use, and so on. Now, much of this is today, fortunately, possible to adapt on the digital platform. And that's where the value proposition and also the challenges come from. Now, the value proposition is that you can reach, the last mile. Of course, there are systems that have to be put in place and things like that. But then that's the advantage. You can reach the masses, and what probably the government says of 50 GR can be achieved not in probably 15 years, but it's possible to do it in probably 5 years time if the digital platform is accessible to everyone with all the devices and so on. Of course, there are things that have to be looked at. Now, in as much as saying that the digitalization has pushed every single aspect of administration. Typically, a university has academics on one side and academic administration on the other side, and both of them are addressed on the digital platform. There are multiple applications today available. There are two ways of doing it. One could probably go from first principles, develop the systems, and then create a digital platform that looks at both the administration as well as the academics. The other easy way out would be to, there are third-party applications available in space. One can easily build all those applications on a multi-tenant architecture and create multiple instances of that and make it available, make it resemble the conventional universities, in addition to itself, the platform itself, driving the courses and things like that, the programs and so on. So there are two ways. It really depends on, of course, getting the third-party content is still a challenge, but there is a lot of third-party content available, and over a period of time, our own people would generate more content on portals like Swayam and so on. The only point there being the quality aspect, the quality aspect of the content. Now, in order to really provide access on a digital platform to everyone, it doesn't be, it doesn't work out if almost everything is sought to be done on a digital platform. So therefore, there must be a hybrid, model where the hands-on, wherever the hands-on skills are required, probably they need to be connected to the skill centers with the outside world where the experiential skills can be obtained. But all in all, the future universities will need to move towards increasing digitalization and adapt to digital transformation, and also be available to new models of pedagogies. Like for example, today people will need, not everything that is, there are almost 10 technologies that are required today for and it's agnostic. It doesn't depend on disciplines. So every discipline, whether it within engineering and outside the engineering space, will require these 5-6 skills to be meaningfully employed and make something in the future. So some of those technologies are like your cloud technology, your IoT, your all those technologies that are required to drive the industry 4.0, like cybersecurity and so on, blockchain. So these are the technologies that are driving the skills space, the new skills space. So therefore, much of it can actually be done online, but not all of it. So therefore, one requires to intelligently connect this with the outside world, the skill space, and provide those kind of skills. And in all this space, there are two things which the NEP has done, multi-point entry exam. I want to bring that out because there's a lot of collaboration that is required in order to really, realize the multi-point entry exit, the accumulation of credits and so on. It's not only the collaboration within the institution, within departments, which is also a question today. Many departments don't talk to the other departments, things like that. All that has to change. It also talks about collaboration outside the institution. Unless as a institute, for example, Delhi University, unless it collaborates with IIT Delhi, there can't be possibly, exchange of courses, exchange of credits, and things like that. And there is also the multi-point entry exit, which means that after every year of exit possible, there must be competency-based skills built at that level, which connects with a certain job role in the industry. Otherwise, what happens is there is no real point in dropping out and coming back in again. So there must be a value proposition created. All this will require micro credentials. Not everything is possible to be done in the class. So therefore, third-party content providers must be engaged meaningfully, and micro credentials will have to be created. Multiple certifications will have to be created, and over a period of time, for example, if there are 4 years in a program, probably a certification in a certain specified area can be thought of, and the student will be better off with probably 8 micro credentials by the time he completes this, and which must be intelligently connected to the job roles in the industry and things like that. Along with this, what happens is now you're talking of fractional credits, and all this is possible in some way to be achieved on a digital platform. So therefore, the government, in declaring its intentions of setting up a digital university, probably is the best way to push the learning paradigm across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mantha. The third-party content creators are definitely essentially needed, because it's not a small job to be accomplished merely by the faculty members. They are already engaged with lots of teaching activities, and it may be a new activity for them. They might not be having relevant experience and exposure to develop such kind of contents. Coming to Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, what steps are needed to help education sector for global common good through inclusive digital transformation? Dr. Vaishnav, you are on mute. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think from the vantage point of Atal Innovation Mission, where innovation and entrepreneurship is, or integration of innovation and entrepreneurship in the education mainstream is the endeavor. I want to say, maybe share a few things complementary to what Professor Mantha said. He gave a very comprehensive overview of where we stand. In the innovation entrepreneurship bit, in fact, maybe the what one is seeking is a balance between mind and hands, and that in some ways it is aided by the digital transformation, and in some cases it is there's a tension with the digital transformation, because the hands bit is not the digital bit, if you would, right? I think the what is aided by the digital transformation is that a lot of what we call what used to be a either a black box or or something, a knowledge that was not very easy to acquire. Those things have changed because of the digital access. I mean, access to content digitally, the infrastructure, etc. For example, you know, a lot of the entrepreneurship as a know-how, in some ways, you know, used to be on the dinner tables of the business families. In some ways, it was not as demystified as science is. For example, that anybody comes into a science stream and they know this, they learn the scientific method, and they can do experiments, and they can have a hypothesis, do experiments, and then prove it, reject it, whatever. It's very, very clearly laid out, right? Entrepreneurship as a science was not very clearly laid out, but now it is clear, it's clearer, and it's also available quite easily if you have the digital means. And it's also beginning to be available in one's own language also, because a lot of the local content creation becomes much easier. Also, a lot of how do I do, I mean, how to fix this, how to fix that, how to build this or that or whatever, all of that is so easy to obtain now. I think what is what still remains a challenge is that the reorientation of, there was mention of NEP, and NEP is a wonderful backdrop to going there. But the whole inculcation of the learning by doing phenomena, I think that for innovation entrepreneurship, that's really critical. And that aspect has to go beyond the digital penetration of the digital means, because at some point one would have to really engage with material, and engage with people, and you know, a lot of the times, for instance, on the education side, the challenge has been that problems and solutions are conceptualized in the laboratory, and when you go out in the market, you realize nobody needs them. And so that, I mean, those aspects we will have to will have to be ones where we develop this balance between what's available digitally easily versus what one has to earn from hard work physically.
Right.
So I think that that's how I see the sort of the what we get from digital versus where the limitations are.
Right. Well said, Dr. Vaishnav. Of course, local content creators are needed. Dilip, who was having this inaugural session, he mentioned that how less number of people are there, those who understand in English language. So the content creation in local language is needed. Professor Gokhale, you
Yeah.
have mentored several institutions. You have developed them from scratch to heights. So how do you imagine or reimagine school education, especially first, then undergraduate as well as postgraduate education, and simultaneously research activities?
Yeah. Uh, Thank you very much. I think I want to make a distinction between the school education, then undergraduate teaching institutions, and then the postgraduate research institutes. And the impact of the digital technology that we are talking about, or the digital transformation that we are talking about, is going to be different. For example, in the school system, there are, I'm just taking a assessment of the current status of affair. In the school system, I think most of the records are the student records, etc. They have been digitized. Okay, digital transformation obviously has not taken place. As a matter of fact, I firmly believe that digital transformation in any of the Indian institutes have actually taken place as of now. I did some little bit of reading. In US, they are working on the concept of paperless school. In my opinion, it is slightly dangerous, because you are isolating this child, from developing himself into something, which is going to be long lasting. So that particular thing, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit of a difficult proposition. As far as the undergraduate teaching institutes are concerned, there has been some movement, and that movement is in terms of admission processes, in terms of let us say the grades, to be sent out and so on and so forth. Quite a few people, they started using NPTEL or SWAYAM courses, so we are on the way of digitalization. Not yet in the digital transformation, but digitalization, we have been able to do it. So when we go to the digital transformation, some of the things, that we have mentioned, saying, connecting the people, connecting the student, connecting the government entities, etc. Culture, technology, all this ensemble, we have to bring it into one particular packet. I believe, that to start with, if we are going to take this particular initiative in a big way, then the universities, they will have to rephrase and reframe their vision, mission, objective, goals, and all those statements. The statements are partly they are made for NBA or NAC accreditation or some such thing, because that's a mandatory thing. But now let us search our soul, and try to find out, what sort of changes we would like to have. I'd like to bring two things to your attention. One is that IIT Madras's effort, into having a strategic development plan. The first one was for the year 2003 to 2010. The second one was 2010 to 2020. And the third one is right now in place from 2000 to up to 2027 or some such thing. Why am I mentioning, is that the continuous progression of the institute, in terms of what is required for today, is something, that IIT Madras has been able to proactively show it, saying, that, and they firmly believe in it, So I kind of suspect, that we need to do a lot of work, Just about a week ago, the Secretary, Ministry of Education, he conducted a meeting of all the CFTIs, and I happened to be in Durgapur, so I attended that particular meeting, and this was related to Prime Minister's initiative in Gati Shakti. So Pragati ki Gati or Bharat ki Shakti, so that was the theme, and quite a few IITs, IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, they spelt out, what they are, or in which particular platform they are right now. everybody is doing it in a piecemeal fashion, that is basically, in the algorithmic development, in terms of supply chain management, in terms of integrating some of these things, with whatever the industry and the institutions, government departments, etc., they will be coming in, and so on and so forth, So there were there was a, I mean, this initiative is currently driven by Niti, and a lot of courses have been offered. AICT is also participating in it, and so on and so forth, Now, I had a couple of questions and the queries on that, Let us say, that you have a formal or informal basis, for whatever these courses, that we are talking about in terms of supply chain management, in terms of AI, ML, IoT, in terms of pattern recognition, in terms of speech recognition, and so on and so forth, Everybody is doing these things, in a piecemeal fashion as a part of the sort of a research project, and that is the initiative of an individual faculty member, Putting it all together and coming it onto a common platform is going to be a challenging task, in my opinion. And not hurting the institution's autonomy, quote unquote. You need to tell them, in no uncertain terms, that if you want to have the collaboration, cooperation, etc., forget about going outside, but at least in India, then we need to be standing on a common platform. We need to understand each other and adopt each other, And there comes this particular major issue with reference to how do you harmonize these things, and how do you make it a seamless type of a sort of a transaction, where the some sort of a devices, etc., they would not play any role, So there, the artificial intelligence, and then machine learning, etc., they will come in a big way, I believe, we are on a right track. I come from a discipline, aerospace engineering, which has always harped on the cutting edge technologies right from the inception of 1989, when the Boeing 777 is considered to be the first aircraft which has got a paperless design. So all the mock-ups and so on and so forth, they were on the machine. They did that complete digital transformation, because the aircraft was produced, in just about 5 years, and that thing has never happened, So there were engineers and scientists who were working in America. There were scientists who were working, or the industry professionals working in Japan and Australia, and they were able to pull out one of the best twin aisle long distance type of overall aircraft, Boeing 777, And that thing was done not today, but it was about 30 years ago, So digital transformation, had taken place, where what I was mentioning, the strategy, when I want to do it, the organizational structure, that means Boeing plus Boeing Seattle plus Boeing Japan, and so on and so forth. Culture, the Japanese culture is different, American culture is different. That was also integrated. Technology, undoubtedly, it was the internet type of a technology, and then transfer of transactions, and the customers were all of us, you and I, So that was one of the examples, that I can give it, which is telltale about the possibilities and where we can take it, The mute question, as far as I am concerned, and I think Professor Mantha as well as Chintan mentioned, appropriate type of technology which is required by the industry, because the industry is struggling. They want AI people, they want ML people, they want this particular digitization that to take place, but they are not finding enough number of people, who will be able to do this type of a work, So on one side, there is a demand, but on the supply side, which is supposedly academicians foray, we have not been able to take it forward, to the satisfaction of each and everybody, I also would believe, that getting some sort of a detailed manpower requirement in various segments which use AI data science, analytics, etc., in a big way, has to be possibly be done, banking, then manufacturing, then healthcare industry. So if we would be able to get it, saying next 5 years, we would be needing so many people, then we can start preparing, okay. And that is, in my opinion, is something which is important. And if we can pay attention to this, maybe we will be able to take small steps, firm steps, and then achieve whatever we want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gokhale. I mean, it is a time of recreation, so might be things which are non-productive. They needs to be shut down, and fresh creation should be there. So moving to the second question, India is transforming at a faster pace. It is be it ease of doing business, digitalization, infrastructure. As per the report of last month, December 2022, 16,072 new business companies have registered with a paid capital of rupees 617 crore rupees. Now coming to Professor Vaishnav, in the last few years, we have improved in the Global Innovation Index. We have been ranked among first 40 in the GII 2022. Raising my point to Dr. Vaishnav, to have innovation-driven growth, what conducive culture and conditions are needed in the school education as well as in higher education system?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I think first, I think things are moving in the right direction. Can there be a better rate, higher rate of change is the question. And then if you look at what are the barriers to becoming a more innovation-driven economy, and you list down all the barriers. My sense, and I've discussed this with many people. My sense is that our deepest barriers are cultural. In that, families obviously love their children and they want safe futures for them and all of that. There's nothing wrong with it. I am myself an engineer, so how can I say there's something wrong with becoming an engineer, doctor, whatever. But I think it would be. But we are in different times now. I mean, the opportunity set is much larger, and so it would be amazing if we can, if families can trust their children taking risks more, right? Similarly, it would be amazing if academics trusted the industry leaders more, that there can be industry leaders who are who have flair for deeper questions. You do meet such people. Or the industry leaders trusted academics more, that there can be academics who have a flair for translating their work into impact. It would be amazing if governments believed that for several of our most complex challenges, we believe, meaning, I mean, they believe, but they believe more firmly that several of our complex challenges cannot be solved without private sector, and therefore we must actively engage private sector and, with that big picture. And similarly, if private sector believed that there are people in the government who want to move fast and do things, and so I think that those gulfs, I feel, is our deepest challenge. I mean, for me, it came along very clearly during COVID times when I was on the COVID task force. Problem after problem, you identify a dependency on some nation, and then you go about asking, is it that we don't know as a nation how to make zeolite? And you'll find, no, we do. There are people in our nation who do know how to make it. Is it, or we do know the science, but is it that we don't have manufacturing capability? You find that there is manufacturing capability somewhere, although not necessarily engaged in that very endeavor, and so on. But a lot of these people are unconnected, and largely unconnected because, well, first of all, such crises were not there and their lives were going on fine. But the other is that when you start to connect them, you realize that there is this distrust or initial distrust to overcome. And so I think, so that's, I feel, is the deepest sort of set of issues. But then in terms of sort of making our people more capable of engaging with innovation, I think there in our education system, both at sort of the school levels as well as the college levels, we will need to create room for it. Currently, creating room for it in our curricula is a challenging part. I mean, lots of good experiments are going on, so I don't want to be all negative about it, but creating room for it, giving them, giving students, making it a bit student-led, letting them combine courses in innovative ways to serve their interests. I think these are experiments we have to do on a very large scale, I feel, and then innovations will emerge. I mean, Professor Mantha in his opening address was sort of talking about the rapidly changing scenario. And one of the things that I have learned, for instance, which I was very, very struck by when I went to MIT as a PhD student, that many of their processes were very traditional processes. For example, many of their exams, and I've taken those exams, were closed book exams that expected you to memorize a thing or two, which is, people say, oh, nobody should memorize it, nothing. So some of our traditional methods are still preserved in that highest of engineering culture. And one of the things that was very, very clear was that it was largely about learning how to learn. What you learn is up to you, because the world's changing rapidly. And if it changes fast, then you'll have to move fast. And if it changes slow, then you'll have more time and all that. But that's your problem.
Right. So trust is the first thrust area. So that ice block needs to be cracked down. So parents, they should trust more on the inherent attributes of their wards rather than adopting a safe game. Now opportunities are more, hand-holding is more. Atal Innovation Mission is doing wonderful handholding right from school level to university level through establishing incubation centers. So, of course, God has blessed each and every individual with the special attributes. So one needs to identify that attribute and then allow them to grow and find their own ways to proceed the journey of innovation and entrepreneurship ultimately. So, Dr. Vaishnav, am I right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Coming to Professor Mantha, Startup India is a great initiative by the Government of India. We have witnessed unicorns emerge in past few years. We have the potential to pitch the nation as a future manufacturing hub and rewrite the Indian growth story. Your take on seeding and fostering innovation ecosystem in academic institution for innovation to market.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very interesting proposition, to look at the developing the startup ecosystem right from our universities, from our institutions, and so on. First of all, I personally believe innovation needs a lot of personal space, and you need mavericks who are there. I mean, not the straight straight line operators in that sense. People who can think differently, people who can do things differently, have multiple ways of doing things, and so on. So that's extremely important. I mean, I just remember that there is this professor, Thomas Barty, in the computer science at Georgia Tech, and who in his opening preface to the book, he says the the solutions, if you want for a problem fast, you want fast solutions, then you work in a team. But if you want brilliant solutions, let them work individually. So this is something that drives, in the innovation culture and so on. We need to identify that kind of people within our institutions, our universities, and so on. Create an, enable a ecosystem around those people where they can go and try out their ideas and so on. So probably as one way of doing it, what one could do is get into an institution and ask, probably you have a Dropbox, and ask everybody to give maybe 2 ideas that they think can be, in whichever area. I mean, it need not be their discipline, it not be their, place of interest or things like that. If they can give 2 ideas with a small, write-up of what they think as the methodology and the feasibility and things like that. Just a 2-page report. Collect them over and segregate them into, discipline-wise activities, broadly speaking. Then you attach good industry experts in those specific areas and drill down to a smaller number where there is a larger possibility of them being transformed into something real. Now, when this happens, one needs to put in that amount of money, into, making these ideas work out in the sense that MIT Labs also has several institutions can collaborate with them, create new ideas. They give all the online facilities that they have. One can collaborate with them, set up MIT centers in institutions and so on. So if such a drop-down list is created, not only from students, but also from faculty, whoever is interested in creating that, and that smaller list that is created, if the necessary facilities are made available, for example, open 24/7, having a separate entrance to the lab, not, disturbing the rest of the things, and connecting them to appropriate industry experts as they go along, will create probably a lot of traction in the startup India movement and so on. As far as the Make in India concept is concerned, Puneet, you remember last time I had mentioned a certain proposition which works very well in Germany, and the proposition is very simple. The future universities, I mean, we are talking of future universities which must cohabitate with the industry. On the same campus, we need to have both of them existing, hand-holding and doing things together. Of course, the problems come from the connect with the society, connect with the industry. There are different different disciplines, and the problems can be anyone. And as we know, they're all multidisciplinary. In anything that you talk about today is multidisciplinary. So therefore, what is required is create an ecosystem where a Max Planck Institute can thrive on the campus, and where a Fraunhofer Institute can thrive. The Max Planck institution set up by the Max Planck Society could actually create the basic could do research in basic sciences and so on, create propositions, things like that. And the Fraunhofer institution set up by the Fraunhofer Society could then actually aggregate all these ideas and things like that. It's essentially for applied research. So giving a small example, the DRDO routinely has several projects which are highly interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and so on. And what all that one requires is identify a central institution, and you make that the lead center. And when there is a project that comes in, maybe a substitution or maybe creation of something new or improving a process or whatever that is, you disaggregate that into subsystems at the discipline level. Then you connect this lead institution to specific institutions in the country which are good at those disciplines where the disaggregation happens at the discipline level. So now what we have created is a central institute, and there are several institutions around that which are good at their own discipline and activity and so on. So in this process, what you're doing is connecting the right people from the central to aggregate the systems, and the individual institutions to do the discipline-wise development and so on. Now what one should do is go a little further, connect these institutions in specific disciplines with the appropriate industry, and the supply chain keeps growing along that discipline. And now, if there is a product that comes in, that is again goes into the central nodal center that gets disaggregated, goes through along this supply chain. The advantage of doing something like that is that you are actually, the end product is something that the lead center will decide. But along this route, you're creating new processes, new ideas, new initiatives, new manufacturing capabilities once the supply chain keeps growing. So probably Make in India will do much better and it's not necessary to set up a new institution today. The lead center could be any one of those good institutions that we have. And there are any number of institutions good at specific disciplines in the country. So all that we need to do is connect them and create that ecosystem where the ultimate idea is not to publish papers, but to create create new processes, new products, and so on. Innovation is not creating some new product and things like that. Anything that adds value to a current proposition is innovation. So therefore, that's something the way we could progress in that startup, and of course there are things, there are ease of doing business, there are regulations that control the startups, and that is a process of the administrative thing, and the government will certainly look at all those issues. But the fundamental ecosystem must start from the institution, maybe even the schools. It must start there and go upwards to the universities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add a thought?
Please.
Puneet, could I add a thought to that?
Yeah, most
very powerful framework that Professor Mantha just mentioned. And I have to say that the evidence is that our people are ready, for instance, schools, that we were just discussing, there are, if I just say empirically from Atal Tinkering Labs, there are 10,000 of them all across India in secondary and higher secondary schools. And there are some really fascinating trends that one sees here, right? One is that there are now schools where students have now created clubs that teach technology, advanced technology courses to teachers. And teachers have agreed that, okay, students know this better, we will just learn. So that's a really fascinating trend. Another is that you now meet a student here or there who will say that, oh, I'm on my second startup. This is a 14, 15-year-old person who is far more unconstrained in a way in their thinking, right? They don't have a lot of legacy to deal with. So they're moving. And And then the third thing is you do meet people who will say, I have an IP. There are several people who have patents. So now the question is, can we teach them this industrial, this supply chain based paradigm that was just described? How early can we teach them? Now, these days, what we do, and I feel personally, my hypothesis is that there is no, their cognitive capacity is not a limitation. They will learn all this, if we teach them. What we do is, for example, every year there's the ATL marathon. Several thousand, like 6,000-7,000 schools participate. Teams participate, not schools. And then the top 300 ideas are then taken further to give them industrial exposure for a week or so. And you have to see, I was there last week, I was in Bangalore. There was a function being organized called Shepreneurs. This is run by Dell Foundation. And there were 200 girl entrepreneurs from 6th, 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade, who were there to go through a 1-week immersion at Dell. And I was blown away by the confidence of these people. And they have the basics of entrepreneurship down, Now, what they do with it, what we help them do with it, is the next step. But I think this is all very, very doable. In our nation, there is very clear evidence that people will go as far as we would want them to go, or we'd help them go.
Thank you, Dr. Vaishnav.
Puneet, I just want to make 2 quick
Please,
comments. Just on the lines of JPL, IIT Madras had a research park, which is a huge entity, and they are connected, well connected with the faculty, students. They have interdisciplinary projects, and then they are doing wonderfully well. At the same time, some 20 years ago, when the first year student used to come to IIT Madras, he used to ask, am I in the +2 or +3? Because you are teaching me physics, chemistry, mathematics, English, and so on and so forth, So at that time, the institute administration took a decision, and then we introduced a course called as the Industrial Design 101. And this particular course was taught by the senior-most professors from each department. And they would be going in rotation, and then they would be making an impact, So interdisciplinary culture was there, the camaraderie came in, and then it reflected in the Shastra, which is our technical festival, and so on and so forth. It did wonderfully well. Finally, I would like to also mention, that it is imperative, if we want to factor in what Professor Mantha is mentioning, as well as Dr. Chintan is mentioning, that we need to have a database of the faculty, their expertise, okay, and their readiness and willingness, to join hands, Also, from the institutional perspective, whatever the specialized equipment that they have, they would make it available to anybody and everybody, For example, IIT Kanpur has got a flight lab, and all of us, who are in the country, we use that. IIT Madras has got an excellent rocket propulsion lab, and that is available for anybody and everybody, Kanpur has got an excellent wind tunnel, so that could be shareable type of a thing, So some sort of mechanisms and modalities, they need to be worked out, so that all these facilities that we are talking about, centrally funded or centrally created, they are easily available and accessible to anyone who is interested in doing it, I think we need to really look at it, in a giving a broader canvas, so let people pitch in, and then let them try to do it. Most of the IITs, they have got tie-ups with Department of Space, Department of Atomic Energy, Department of Defense, and we have got a lot of joint projects, and then we do take indeed the students, from the other institutes, like NIT student, they can go for a summer term internship. They will be familiar with what the other institute is having, and so on and so forth, and take it further, Students are the driving forces, definitely. But at the same time, everybody knowing who has got what, and who is willing to share and willing to hold the hand, is something which is very, very important. So thank you.
Thank you. So that solar system, sun and orbit mechanism is the key to get connected from centrally located facilities systems to the end users. Professor Manta, I would like to mention a special thanks for giving a deep-rooted solution that we need to give a personal space and enabling a facility of Dropbox, something like that. And I would like to add one more thing. Just one should start writing diary. From morning till evening, we face many problems. Maybe, how to take out the last drop of, toothpaste. It can be just one of them. So that problem, once you start writing that problem, then you start discussing those problems in the canteen or in the bus or in the leisurely time. And you will be amazed to know that there are n number of ways to solve that particular problem. And then one should start writing those solutions in a systematic manner, then find out the workability, feasibility, scalability of that particular solution. And that is how innovation can be taken further. Professor Manta.
Most of the times we are inhibited by the assumptions that we have. Nobody has stated those assumptions. We need to go out of that and do things, outside the space of those so-called, assumptions that we have. And that's the only way probably to go out of the system and develop something. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. NEP 2020 has endorsed digitalization in education, and COVID helped to accelerate this change. As per the reports, which point out the rural-urban digital divide in India, despite registering a significant digital growth rate of 13% in a year, only 31% of rural population uses internet compared to 67% percentage of urban counterparts, keeping rural and urban digital divide in India. Professor Gokhale, your views on the challenges for implementation of imparting education through digital mode?
Yeah, currently a lot of devices are available, a lot of applications are available, chatbot, robotics, virtual and augmented reality, LMS, and so on and so forth. However, these things are not available across the platform. As you rightly put it, the rural and urban divide, it's very much there. We have to figure it out, the efficacy of all these devices, that I just now mentioned, or all the tools that we mentioned, chatbots and robotics and so on and so forth, whether they really add knowledge percept, and do they add something value for the money, if you want to put it, in that particular fashion, could these be the attention diversion technologies? People are interested in knowing the technology and then they are going after it, leaving the domain knowledge, way too far behind, saying, that I will study it in my leisure time tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and so on and so forth, The third important thing is that the teachers and the students, both of them, they should be on the same sort of a platform to use all these devices, all these applications, that just now I mentioned, because if there is and there is a serious difficulty in the older generation, not falling in line, they, as Chintan was mentioning, MIT also still goes to the blackboard, and then take a chalk piece, and then start writing and so on and so forth, It's a good old things, there is nothing wrong in it, and there is no need to run after everything, that is digital, and that is something, which is very sort of lucrative, so as to say, or impressive, Learning new technologies and versus the knowledge upgrade is something which is again an important thing, because suppose if you are going to change all these the data or all the knowledge that you have created and translate it into something, in digital platform, so that it is made accessible to anybody and everybody, that particular thing is important, but verticals, in the knowledge creation, and then all of the, I look at this particular digital medium, is one of the things, where you are able to keep things, in the safe custody, I'll give you a very simple example, that I had to do it, when I was in BNIT Nagpur as a director. Over there, under the TechWhip money, I created a laptop bank, about 75 laptops I purchased it, for the SCST students. It was exactly on the similar lines as your SCST book bank. And these were given in the second year, and second and third year, the student will be able to use it. There were little bit of a criticism saying, that suppose if they mistreat it or something goes wrong, and I said that is a risk that we'll take, but the other student who is sitting in his class, if he has got something and he doesn't have, just because he doesn't have the access, I think it sends a very, very wrong signal, So I took that particular decision. It paid dividends, in its own way. TechWhip appreciated it, saying this is a good thing that you are doing it, So bridging this particular divide, in whichever fashion, is something which is going to be the single most challenging thing, Just because, we have got so many smartphones, in the market, that doesn't mean, that your sort of accessibility, to the best of the knowledge, etc., is in a smooth, transient type of a fashion, These small devices also create a little bit of anxiety, addiction, and then, of course, the issues associated with the social media, and things of that sort, everybody is aware about it, So the technology is a dual-edged type of a sword, I mean, it can take you to a different level. It can be hurting you also in a different level, And as far as the institutes are concerned, academic institutes are concerned, they would always be looking at the return on the investment. If I'm going to give something like this, what is likely to happen, how do I take care of it from day one to day? And all of us are aware, the restrictions and compulsions on the tuition fee hike and so on and so forth, So we have a serious issue associated with these type of challenges, Soon enough, we'll be able to move out. And there was about 20 years ago, there was this particular rumor or whatever you want to call it, 10,000 rupees laptop and so on and so forth. Nothing worked. So, making big statements, and then carrying it forward, is indeed something very, very important, and I think we should look at it, and we should convince the government, saying, that this is for the good of the students, and then you should at least partake your responsibility, So, yeah, that's what I wanted to
Professor
say.
Mantha, you want to?
In as much as saying that what Professor Gokhale said is very, very important, there are a few simple technology-based solutions to probably mitigate the digital divide that you're talking about. I mean, availability of devices, bandwidth in certain areas we know is very unsatisfactory. So probably the BSNL, NIC certificate, the agencies facilities can be looked at aggregating those facilities and so on. In addition to that, one could possibly look at sanitized mobile vans, with PCs and smart devices and access points, data access points to all remote locations, that lack connectivity or have no PCs or smartphones. They can be made. It's something like saying the classroom will go to villages rather than the village, village people coming to classrooms and to the cities and so on. And there are actually two more solutions that the government can think of. If a lot of times we find that the bandwidth is extremely poor, there is interference and so on. And so the people are now, even when they have devices, they can't really access the online content. So if a maximum throughput and minimal interference is required for the conduct of, let's say there are nationwide teaching and, nationwide exams to be conducted and so on. But channels 1, 6, and 11 of the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum can be used very, very effectively. Of course, some of these may need, they are used by the defense services, but then they are extremely useful for educational purposes. the DTH channels, which the government talked about, can actually reach the villages. Finally, there is another solution. If the cable, we have a cable TV network which spreads into the villages. If we can provide a certain time of the day, or maybe the evening, that network can provide education in at least some part of the time. So some of these things can be suitably done for different scenarios. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mantha, for adding up valuable suggestions.
I had a thought there, Puneet, on this, I think, very important point on rural-urban divide. Definitely there's a divide, as Professor Gokhale said. In normal course of how it has the potential to exacerbate the haves and have-nots. But that being said, I think technology is kind of agnostic, right? Technology is not out there to do this to people. It's really people who decide what to do with it. So like Professor Mantha was saying, you can imagine a perfectly inclusive, beautiful future using the now available, far more democratized technology forefront. The question is, if we intend to have that glorious, equitable future, technology will not be in our way. That's the bottom line. So, to me,
I agree, but because many CSR activities are ongoing to help schools in rural areas, as well as companies are upcoming with the smart plans, as well as accessibility of data. It's so easy in India now. It's not at all a problem, and affordable cost. So now moving to technology can empower educators to become co-learners with their students by building new experiences for deeper exploration of content. Professor Mantha, your outlook on the effectiveness of digital mode of teaching learning experience.
I mean, personally, I feel the best way is the traditional Guru Shishya parampara, that we follow. There must be a teacher, there must be students, and interactive exchanges must happen. In the Vedic time, to be precise, in the Shankaracharya's times, when he built those 4 matas, they had at least 8 different pedagogies which they were using for teaching learning. And the first one is the Shravana Vidhi, which means that you listen and you learn and so on. Somebody is speaking, you listen, and that's it. And the last pedagogy of that list is Upadesha Vidhi. Somebody is giving Upadesh and somebody is learning. In between, they have at least 6 more pedagogies which take the students from realizing what is not said, taking people from real to unreal, things like that. There is Adhyaropa Apavada Vidhi, which actually takes people to imagine the world outside and then figure out what is being taught and things like that. But unfortunately, what we have done is we have forgotten all the 6 in between, but we are now only with the first one and the last one, the Shravana Vidhi and Upadesha Vidhi. Most of I'm not saying every institute does that, but then most of them, for various reasons, it's just only limited to that. Now, as from the technology perspective, there are several edtech companies which are doing a lot of work in this area. What is missing in an online medium is the emotional connect with the teacher. In a classroom, the teacher connects with the student, both at the physical level and emotional level. That's completely missing. And because of bandwidth, we say that you switch off the video. We don't know the other fellow has switched off the audio also. Therefore, things keep happening like that. Online medium can be effective only when the motivation levels are very, very high from the learner's perspective. From as far as the content itself is concerned, there are several pedagogies available. The research says that 17, 18 minutes is all that you can hold onto a person. So therefore, micro learning, micro credentials becomes extremely important. You break the 3-hour program into maybe 0.5 credits multiplied by 6, and then you try teaching them. That's very useful. Finally, there is one other research that's happening is into the fact that people are hooked onto games for hours together. But when you give him a lecture study material, he doesn't care to be there even for 15, 20 minutes. So there are several gaming algorithms which are being used, and new pedagogies are being developed. And that's another research area that's happening. Probably in time to come, we will see that. But in an online mode, if we want to really have an effective teaching learning process, probably there should be 2 professors addressing this issue and not one. One takes you through the concepts and things like that. And there must be one other equally good who is actually addressing your queries on the chat box, and later on both of them coming together and hand holding on the questions and so on. It's ultimately the conceptual understanding that makes people come back to the lecture. Otherwise, it's very difficult. Thank you.
Well said, Professor Mantha. Learning a story through the comics of Panch.
Storytelling is something that we have completely lost.
So learning a story or through visualization or by reading comics, it's more effective than merely listening, as well as a boring listening without any modulations and without creating any interest. Coming to Dr. Gokhale, your viewpoint on can digital mode of learning help in deep learning?
I think deep learning is a subset, right? Artificial intelligence is at the top, then machine learning, and then the deep learning. We are jumping across, right now, in my opinion, we are not yet ready with the AI. Okay, artificial intelligence, we are at the brim of it, So I think we need to be a little bit patient, with reference to the deep learning, because deep learning has got a, as Professor Mantha was mentioning, it has got a very sort of it takes you into the artificial neural networks and whatnot, and he mentioned, saying, that we are jumping across, there is a very simple thing right now. I am not recollecting it, but the way in which, the Indian system devises, Shikshak, Adhyapak, Pradhyapak, Guru, and that type of a thing, these are the different stages through which you will be able to achieve this particular, I mean, if you personally ask deep learning, would the something, that Shankaracharya would be telling it to you, as the ultimate thing, is it a deep learning? Because that is the essence of life, right? It is the essence of life, forget about the nuts and bolts, that we are talking about over here. But the essence of life, if we would be able to cover it, in terms of whichever mechanism, artificial intelligence, machine learning, this or that, or conventional thing, both Chintan as well as Mantha, both of them, they mentioned, the traditional ways are not to be, I mean, we should not be jumping into the stream, which is rapidly flowing, because there is always a chance that we may drown in it, So I think let us be cautious, and we will get to this particular deep learning in due course of time,
So technology is an aid. Human connect cannot be missed out. Though we say that everything can be learned, it cannot be taught. But still, the human intervention is always needed, to instigate you, to motivate you, to activate you for the process of making you ready for the learning. Dr. Chintan, would you like to add something? Because
I think that's
still 1 minute to go.
That is very nicely summarized. many of the questions that you have asked, Puneet, don't have a binary answers. There are many shades in between, and that's what makes this whole domain most interesting. But I think as long as we keep an eye on sort of the forward propulsion and at least the basics being in place, good sort of ethics and habits being in place, then I think new onslaught of technology is not a problem, I feel.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan. For last 1.5 hours, we have been discussing technology and education. And I feel that had I gone through an article, spending my time 1 hour 30 minutes to read that article, the learning would have not been that deep-rooted, by being with 3 intelligent, wise people full of experiences. Thank you, Professor Gokhale, Professor Mantha, and Dr. Chintan for being with us and sharing knowledge, wisdom, and your experiences with all of us. And the recording of this particular session will be made available. I'll be sharing it after 1 week or so. And with the promise that in the coming times, we'll be having such more fruitful and meaningful discussions with you all. And you'll be courteous to extend your support once again. So
thank you, Dr.
Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all, thank you.
So much. It was very educational for me as well.
Yeah. Hope we would meet soon again, on some other platform maybe, so.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.